The stage had already been set. The speakers were powered up. The first band stood there, running through a sound check like everything was right on schedule. Then I walked to the front gate of my ranch, and shut it. The padlock clicked. And just like that, everything stopped. No music played. No tickets were scanned. Not a single person stepped inside. And the man who had spent 4 months organizing a full music festival on land that didn't belong to him, was left standing in an empty field, staring at $40,000 worth of equipment that wasn't going anywhere. Because the owner had arrived. And the owner had a lock. And that lock had one key. And that key was sitting in his pocket. My name is Tim Harrell. I'm 67 years old. For 25 years, I worked as a commercial litigation attorney in Memphis, Tennessee. Then I retired, left it all behind, and headed west. I bought 131 acres just outside Flagstaff, Arizona, in Coconino County, where the ponderosa pines grow thick. The elevation sits just above 7,000 feet, and the morning air feels like something you don't fully understand until you finally breathe it. I keep a small herd of bison on the back end of the ranch. I don't grow crops. I don't produce anything. And I don't answer to anyone. And to me, that freedom is the greatest thing I've earned after a lifetime filled with too many billable hours and not enough quiet mornings in the woods. I'm telling you about my background for a reason. Because what happened over the next 3 months, after I locked that gate, didn't unfold by accident. A retired litigation attorney doesn't wander through a property dispute. He walks through it knowing exactly what's behind every door, before he even touches the handle. Next to my southern boundary sat a development called Ponderosa Heights. It had 148 homes and was built between 2016 and 2020. The place was marketed as a premium mountain lifestyle, pine trees, cool air, and easy access to Flagstaff. They had a clubhouse, maintained trails, and even a small amphitheater used for community events. The HOA president was a man named Devlin Cross. He was 45 years old and had moved into Ponderosa Heights 2 years before all of this started. Before that, he had built a career producing mid-level music festivals and outdoor events around Phoenix. He knew how to run an event. But he clearly didn't understand the difference between renting a venue and using someone else's land without permission. Devlin was energetic. Always pushing forward. The kind of person who thrives when things are moving fast, but struggles the moment something gets in the way. And in his first year as HOA president, he decided their annual community event wasn't good enough. So he came up with something bigger. He called it the Ponderosa Sound, a one-day outdoor music festival. 4 regional acts. 2 performance slots. Around 2,000 attendees expected. Tickets for residents and the general public. Vendors. Food. The works. Projected profit? $65,000 for the HOA. There was just one problem. The venue he chose was my land. Now here's where it gets interesting. My ranch sits slightly below the elevation of their development. In the northern section of my property, about 400 yards south of the fence line, there's a natural bowl-shaped clearing. It's real. It's beautiful. And it has the kind of natural acoustics event organizers dream about. From the community trail along their southern edge, you can see it clearly. And I have no doubt that one day, standing on that trail, Devlin Cross looked down at that clearing, and instantly saw a perfect venue. And from that moment on, he moved straight into planning. Without ever asking the one question that actually mattered. Was it his to use? He never contacted me. Never tried. As far as I could tell later, he didn't even check who owned the land. He just assumed. And spent 4 months building a festival on that assumption. I found out 6 days before it was supposed to happen. A woman named Barbara Stills, who lived in Ponderosa Heights, called me on a Sunday afternoon. We had spoken 2 years earlier about a boundary line, so she had my number. She asked if I was excited about the festival. Then she asked if the access plan for bringing in the stage and sound equipment had been finalized. I told her I had no idea what she was talking about. She went quiet. Then she sent me a link. It was the HOA's website. The Ponderosa Sound Festival was laid out in full detail: schedule, vendors, ticket sales, everything. And right there on the page was a site map. Stage placement. Audience area. Vendor rows. Parking zones. All clearly drawn inside a boundary that, when I pulled up the county parcel map and overlaid it, sat entirely on my land. I stared at it for about 60 seconds. Then I made a call. I reached out to my former law partner, David OA, back in Memphis. He knew how I operated. Knew how I thought. I explained the situation. He didn't hesitate. "Tim, you already know what to do." "I do," I said. He asked if I wanted him to fly out. "Not yet." Then I sat down at my kitchen table and got to work. For the next 2 hours, I built a file. And not just any file, the kind that holds up under pressure. The kind that doesn't rely on assumptions or probably enough. The kind that survives a courtroom. I gathered everything. My deed and parcel records. Screenshots of the HOA website, with timestamps. The festival map layered over official county records, clearly showing it was all on my property. Ticket sales, 840 tickets already sold at $35 each. Vendor registrations, 28 vendors who had paid for booth space. 6 weeks of social media promotions, using photos of my clearing, taken from their trail. By the time I was done, the numbers told the story. Over $42,000 had already been collected. And the event hadn't even started. Then I made one more call. An attorney in Flagstaff named Wanda Carver. She specialized in property and event liability law. And I had been told she was fast. And precise. With only 6 days left. I was going to need both. Wanda reviewed the file I sent her within 2 hours and called me back at 9 p.m., confirming what I already suspected: this was a textbook case of unauthorized commercial use of private property. The documentation trail I had built was as thorough and airtight as anything she had seen, and while the 6-day timeline was tight, it was still workable if we moved first thing the next morning. On Monday morning, Wanda filed 3 critical items. First, she submitted a formal complaint to the Coconino County Sheriff's Office, detailing the unauthorized commercial event, including all exhibits, and requesting deputies be on site the day of the festival to enforce my property rights. Second, she sent a formal notice to the Ponderosa Heights HOA and Devlin Cross personally, informing them that I owned the land, demanding immediate cancellation of the event, and requiring preservation of all festival-related financial records. Third, she filed an emergency injunction with Coconino County Superior Court, seeking to prohibit the HOA from conducting any commercial activity on my property until the property rights dispute could be resolved. The injunction hearing was set for Wednesday, 4 days before the festival. Wanda presented the parcel map overlay, the HOA's site map, promotional materials, and ticket sales documentation. The judge granted the order within the hour. The injunction prohibited the Mesa Verde Community Association, its agents, and contractors from holding any event on the specified parcel, and required the HOA to notify all ticket holders within 24 hours. Devlin Cross did not cancel the event. Pause on that for a moment, it's the decision that shaped everything that followed. Devlin received the injunction. His attorney, a Flagstaff real estate lawyer named Gordon Pratt, had apparently been retained Monday afternoon after our notice arrived. Pratt reviewed the injunction and advised Devlin of its legal force. Despite that, Devlin chose to proceed with setup. He believed that his motion to dissolve the injunction, scheduled for Thursday, would succeed. By continuing with preparations, he thought the festival could open Saturday no matter the court's ruling. Gordon filed the motion Thursday morning. Wanda opposed it, and the judge denied it in a ruling that took just 11 minutes from start to finish. According to Pratt, it was one of the most direct bench rulings he had ever witnessed in a property matter, effectively saying that an HOA's good faith belief in the availability of someone else's land was not enough to override a property rights injunction. Devlin moved forward anyway. By Friday evening, the stage was built in my natural clearing. A professional sound system was in place, monitor speakers set up for the opening act. Portable restrooms, vendor tents, and a generator array were all on site. The access road that production trucks had used was created by driving through my northern pasture fence at a grade that allowed a loaded truck to cross, adding a damaged fence to the list of unauthorized impacts. I documented everything Friday evening from inside my property line with a camera and with a licensed land surveyor named Carl Beam, whom Wanda had arranged. Carl methodically recorded every structure and piece of equipment on my land with GPS coordinates and measurements for a formal survey report. By 8 p.m., every item's location relative to my property boundary was fully documented. I went to bed at 10 p.m., set my alarm for 5:30 a.m., and prepared for the morning. The festival day dawned clear, with that sharp high-altitude Arizona light that makes Ponderosa Pines almost glow. I drove to the main gate at 6:15, parked my truck across the entrance, walked to the gate, clicked the padlock shut, and put the key in my shirt pocket. I poured coffee from a thermos and waited. The first production vehicle arrived at 6:42 a.m., loaded with equipment and catering supplies. The driver stopped at my gate. I rolled down my window calmly and told him the gate was locked, the event was unauthorized, and he should contact the event organizer. He called someone on his phone and parked at the side of the road. Minutes later, more vehicles arrived. By 7:15, 6 production vehicles lined the county road outside my gate, all drivers on their phones, none gaining access. Devlin Cross arrived at 7:22 in a black truck. I met him at the gate. He looked at the lock, looked at me, and said, "Tim, I think we can work something out here." I told him there was nothing to work out. The injunction issued 3 days earlier prohibited the event. I had already contacted the Coconino County Sheriff's Office, and deputies would arrive within the hour. He mentioned a motion to dissolve the injunction. I reminded him it had been denied the previous morning. His expression said it all, he knew and had proceeded anyway. That look was the culmination of a series of decisions that seemed manageable in the moment but had now become one enormous problem standing between him and a $40,000 stage he had built on someone else's property. The sheriff's deputies arrived at 8:15 a.m., 2 units. The lead deputy, Officer Reyes, had been briefed and had a copy of the injunction. He approached Devlin and me, reviewed the documentation, and asked if Devlin was aware of the court order. Devlin admitted he was but thought the motion to dissolve would be granted. Officer Reyes informed him the motion had been denied, showed him the official ruling, and instructed that all equipment and personnel had to be removed. Devlin said the equipment was inside the fence and he needed access. I unlocked the gate and stepped aside. For the next 4 hours, I watched the Ponderosa Sound Festival get disassembled and loaded onto trucks in the clearing where it had been built over the previous 2 days. The band scheduled to open arrived at 9:30, with instruments, tour van, and manager from Phoenix. They stood at the edge of the clearing, watching the stage come apart, wearing the expression of musicians who had seen shows canceled before, but never quite like this. I felt genuinely bad for the musicians. They had done nothing wrong and had driven a long distance, relying on a contract with someone who had no authority to promise them a venue. I made it a point to speak briefly with the band's manager, telling him that my dispute was entirely with the event organizer. I said I hoped they would be compensated for their travel and preparation, even though I knew it was unlikely, but it felt important to say. The civil litigation Wanda filed the following Monday was the most comprehensive property case I had seen in 25 years of commercial litigation. And I say that as someone who has been on both sides of dozens of property disputes. The complaint named the Ponderosa Heights HOA, Devlin Cross personally, and the production company that had built the stage, damaged my fence, and continued setup after the injunction was served. The claims included trespass, unauthorized commercial use of private property, violation of the court injunction, fence damage, and economic damages based on the full revenue picture of the festival, including ticket sales, vendor fees, and sponsor revenue collected using my land as the venue. The injunction violation claim had the most immediate impact. Contempt of court is a serious legal category, and it creates pressure across an entire situation instantly. Gordon Pratt filed a response to the contempt motion, arguing that Devlin had believed in good faith that the injunction would be dissolved and that continuing with production was reasonable. Wanda's reply was sharp and concise: an injunction is not a suggestion. Running a commercial event on private property after receiving and acknowledging a court order is contempt, no matter what you believe about the court's future decision. The judge agreed. 3 weeks after the event, Devlin Cross was found in contempt of court. He was sanctioned $8,000 payable to the court and ordered to pay Wanda's fees related to the contempt proceedings, in addition to the main civil case. The finding was entered into the public record of Coconino County Superior Court. The production company quickly settled their part because their liability was clear. They had installed a stage, sound system, generator, and access road on my property after the injunction. Contractors cannot follow instructions to violate a court order and escape responsibility. Their insurance covered the fence repairs and contributed to overall damages, closing their part of the case with no further litigation. The HOA civil settlement took 3 months and was the most complex. It involved not just calculating damages, but a structural question: what were the HOA's governing documents actually allowing in terms of events and land use? And how had the board approved the Ponderosa Sound without verifying venue ownership or authorization? Wanda retained an HOA governance specialist named Philip Crane to review the HOA documents and the board's decision-making for the festival. Philip's report showed the board had approved the budget and event concept without any documentation of permission for the venue. That governance failure exposed each board member who voted for it to potential personal liability. That report drove the comprehensive settlement. The HOA's insurance carrier reviewed it alongside the damages, realizing the risk wasn't just from this festival, but from the same governance failure creating future exposure. Insurance carriers prefer settlements in situations like this to avoid ongoing liability. The final settlement fully covered my damages, fence repair, pasture restoration, Wanda's fees, and commercial appropriation damages calculated from the festival revenue collected using my property, including refunded tickets, partially returned vendor fees, and sponsor contributions. The total payment was $341,000, paid by the HOA's liability carrier within 45 days of signing. The settlement also required 3 changes to the HOA's governing documents. A mandatory land use verification rule: no community event could be approved without documented evidence of venue authorization, including owner consent for private land. Annual training for board members on HOA authority from a licensed governance attorney. A formal, recorded document filed with Coconino County confirming my ranch was not under HOA jurisdiction and that no HOA activity could access it without my written consent. Devlin Cross resigned the week the settlement was signed. He did not issue a letter explaining his resignation, and the board did not comment. His departure was only noted briefly in the community newsletter. 4 months of planning, $40,000 in production costs, 3 months of litigation, $341,000 in settlement payments, and 0 songs were ever played on the stage in my clearing. The new board president sent me a hand-delivered letter rather than mail, showing situational awareness. It was short and sincere. The board understood what had happened, committed to implementing the settlement changes fully, and promised my property would be respected. They hoped we could be neighbors without lawyers. I wrote back, agreeing. I had no interest in conflict, only in my property being exactly what my deed said it was. The clearing is exactly as it was before. The Ponderosa pines remain around its edge, and the natural bowl-shaped terrain still catches the afternoon light, the same way that, I imagine, made Devlin see a venue from the community trail. I walk past it most mornings and see only a clearing in my pine forest. The bison herd now grazes there in the evenings, something they hadn't done before the disruption. I watch them in the late light and think about that Saturday morning, sound system running, band doing a sound check, padlock clicked shut, and the first song of the Ponderosa Sound Festival that was never played, and never will be. Some things are worth protecting before the music starts. Once it starts, the conversation changes. I had no interest in a conversation. I had an interest in a lock, a key, a property line, a court order, and 25 years of knowing exactly what those things mean, and how to use them. If you've ever had someone look at your land and see an opportunity without asking if you were available, I want to hear about it in the comments. Tell me what you did first, because the first decision is always the most important. Subscribe for more and share this with anyone who owns rural land near a residential development, because the view from their trail and the view from your porch are the same, but only one of you owns it.